now we have Nikki to be presenting her case. But before she starts, Volker, would you like to give your insights why this case was a winning case and why this was successful for you?
Yes, our small committee was very intrigued by the case that was presented by Nikki, because this was a situation where you have cattle and sheep in one farm. And as you know, small ruminants can also be infected by BVD virus. And in this case, it looked to me as if there was some ping pong going on between these two parts of the farm, the sheep part and the cattle part. And Nikki undertook, she did some detective work in trying to find out where's the virus and where can we get rid of it and how can we improve the situation of both the sheep and the cattle BVD-wise. And that, in my opinion, was a very good example of interspecies transmission and the epidemiological role that sheep might play. Not always, but in rare case like this one, it could be a problem.
Yeah, thank you, Volker. So now, Nikki, now stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Nikki. I graduated from Edinburgh Vet School in 2009. I then spent 3.5 years in mixed practice in Worcestershire in central England before joining Toaster Farm Vets in 2013. We started a BVD control programme at around about that time for our breeding herds, and currently we've got around 75% of our herds actively engaged in BVD control. So we've been doing a lot of testing. We have definitely found some interesting cases along the way, but for me this is definitely the most interesting one I've found so far. Next slide, please. So this is the herd that we had the problems in. Only a small herd, around 20 pedigree cows. All the females at the time were being retained as replacements to expand the herd. All the males were kept entire and sold as bulls, either fat or mainly for breeding. They have been a member of a cattle health scheme since 2013, and we've been testing for BVD and yoni since that time. They did buy in animals and they did attend shows, but as part of the cattle health scheme rules, they were adhering to the strict quarantine and testing required. There were a couple of cattle neighbours, but again, as part of the cattle health scheme rules, there were good 3 metre distance boundaries between, often with a hedge in the middle, so there was no nose-to-nose contact possible. They had started to vaccinate for BVD in December 2015, but it had lapsed. And the farm also ran a flock of 130 ewes, which did co-graze with the cattle. Next slide, please. So as we said, we've been testing for BVD since 2013, and on a check test in 2016, we found that 3 out of the 4 eligible animals that we tested were seropositive for BVD. So we undertook a PI hunt to find out what was going on, and unfortunately we found 4 antigen positive animals. One was a very poorly grown heifer. She'd had chronic pneumonia problems ever since she was a calf, and she was subsequently euthanized. But we did identify 3 very normal looking calves who were PIs. One of these was put down for poor growth rates in the end, but 2 of them did carry on very well and were eventually sold for slaughter. We had a stillbirth in November 2016. This was BVD positive on tissue testing. And to follow up the PI hunt, we started tag and testing all the calves the following spring. We had 1 confirmed PI in that calf crop, and we also had a mild diarrhea outbreak that was diagnosed as rotavirus. Next slide, please. There is a video here which hopefully will play. It's a little bit jerky, I think. So I was on the farm in March 2017. I was there to put down one of the PIs actually, and I was presented with this wobbly, shaky lamb. Now these signs would be consistent with a PI lamb due to generally to border disease, a pestivirus in sheep. Now obviously we were already dealing with a pestivirus in the cattle herd, so a little bit concerned about what we were seeing. So we blood sampled this lamb and sent the sample off for PCR for confirmation of what was going on. We were all very interested to find that the lamb came back negative for border disease, but positive for BVD type 1. Thanks. So we'd already got a control program for the cattle herd. We'd done our PI hunt, we were tag and testing, and we did also begin vaccination with a live vaccine in October 2017. But obviously we needed to turn our attention to the sheep flock at this point. Like we would in a PI hunt in cattle, we blood sampled the dams of all our wobbly probable PI lambs. All of those were negative. We also blood sampled all the sheep bought in the previous year to see if there are any culprits there, and they were all negative. We decided not to retain any of that year's lamb crop. We could have clinically normal looking PIs in there that we hadn't identified, and the aim was to get all those lambs gone as soon as possible. So I either finished or moved to away grazing before tupping, so before the ewes became pregnant away, to try and remove any circulating virus in the sheep flock. Next slide, please. And we carried on our surveillance, and in 2018 we thought we were getting there. All our calves, including abortions and stillbirths, were virus negative. We had no wobbly lambs, so we definitely thought we were winning the battle. However, unfortunately, in 2019, I was presented with this little chap. There's a video there which hopefully might play again. Very slowly. So again, he's got signs of tremor and is definitely wobbly when he walks. So we had him, and we also had a PI calf identified on tag and test. We blood sampled both of these animals, and we sent the samples up to the SRUC in Edinburgh for testing, and both came back PCR positive for BVD. The staff at the SRUC were very helpful and suggested we could get these samples DNA sequenced at the Morden Institute, and both were identified as the same type, so type 1A, and the comment from the lab was these were likely to be from the same initial virus source, which is probably a PI cow. Next slide, please. But at this point, we were a bit confused as to where the virus had come from. We had tested all our cattle. We knew the status of every cow on that farm at the time. And I said we did have a couple of PIs that did make it to fat weight, but they had left the herd in October 2017. Now, in order for the calf and the lamb to be born as PIs in spring 2019, we must have had virus around on the farm in the summer and autumn of 2018, which was a long time after that PI left. So it looked like the source of infection was not in our cattle herd. So next slide, please. We had to turn our attention to the sheep flock again, and it was likely we had a problem in there. So the sheep flock had reduced by this point a little bit. So we decided to blood sample the whole lot, anybody who hadn't been blood sampled yet, for BVD virus. And we're very grateful to Boehringer for helping us out with that, with some money towards the testing. Now, we did identify one positive animal. Unfortunately, it was a 2017 born lamb that had slipped through the net. And we did kill that animal without further testing, but that was the only animal identified. But our other interesting point was how did it infect a vaccinated cow? So the cattle herd had started vaccination in October 2017 with Bovella, repeated again in October 2018. So we were a bit concerned that we might have a problem here. However, we scanned the records, and it turned out that the dam of the PI calf hadn't been vaccinated. She wasn't meant to get in calf, so she hadn't had a pre-mating injection. So that was obviously how it got slipped through. And I think both of these points, the lamb that got kept and the vaccination, we need to make sure BVD has no loopholes, because it will take full advantage of any little slip-ups that we might make along the way. Next slide, please. So we updated our control plan. We need to have a robust control plan for both sheep and cattle. So all of our 2019 lambs will have gone for slaughter. We aren't keeping any. Any lambs that are retained from now on will be tested for BVD virus before they stay. And certainly any tups that might come in as well will also be tested. They're going to continue with tag and test, including all stillbirths and abortions. And we're going to continue to submit those results to the Cattle Health Scheme. We're aiming to use those hopefully clear tests towards BVD accreditation. Annual vaccination of the cattle herd will definitely be continuing. We're very convinced of its usefulness. Obviously, the only animal to produce a PI calf was the unvaccinated animal. We're well aware that it might have been worse if the rest of the herd wasn't vaccinated. But a really good example of how it did protect everybody. So we're definitely carrying on with that in the future. And then, of course, any animals that enter the cattle herd will also be tested. And obviously, if we manage to make it out to shows again, careful screening will be happening there as well. Yep, next slide, please. So this is where we are at the moment. This is one of the favourite cows on the farm. This is Gloria. She produced a calf this year, and we're just waiting for 2 more cows to calve this year. But so far, everybody, including a couple of abortions that we had, have been tissue tag negative. We've also had no wobbly lambs this year. So fingers crossed for the last two, and fingers crossed for next year. And we're hoping to get to BVD accreditation again. Next slide, please. We always talk about costs with BVD breakdowns, and I think here, we have got some of the standard ones, but perhaps some that are a little different to some of the breakdowns I've talked about before. So obviously we lost pedigree animals, so a reduction in the breeding animals available and a reduction in the sales available to the farm. We did obviously manage to send a couple of the PIs fat, so we did retain some money there, but again, a loss to the breeding pool at the time. And again, it's only a small herd. All of these animals are very much individually known, very much loved. And so there's a massive emotional impact when they lose calves or we have to euthanize calves that have already got names. We lost the BVD status, which is really important to a pedigree herd. We were aiming for accreditation in 2016, and now we're hoping for 2021. So certainly a long road back from where we were aiming to be. And also a real roller coaster in that we thought we were getting on top of things, and we had good years and then bad years, which certainly took its toll on the farmer and the vet involved at the time. And I think the interesting cost here for this would also be our cost in the sheep flock. So when we went back and looked that year at scanning, there was a high barren rate, so a loss of lambs there. And we had these wobbly lambs that also needed attention. Now, all credit to the farmer on this farm. She nursed every single one of those lambs, and most had gone to go fat. They sort of got used to the wobbliness and carried on. But there's an emotional impact of dealing with poorly animals, and also a time implication of nursing those animals, especially at a time when she's already very busy at lambing. So certainly a lot of impacts on the farm, as well as just the costs involved. Next slide, please. So we've had a couple of conclusions already at BVD, can sneak in wherever you let it. But I think one of the important things here, like we were talking about earlier, that actually some of the signs in this herd were initially very subtle. Our chronic pneumonia calf, one stillbirth, a mild diarrhea outbreak. If we hadn't been doing routine surveillance, I don't know that we would have picked anything up at that time. And we might even have had a more extended breakdown than we had, and certainly bigger losses in the cattle herd. Our most obvious signs at this point were in sheep, but equally, as I say, if we hadn't been doing surveillance, we might have just put that down to border disease and carried on. So I think the fact that we were testing hopefully did minimise the impact in this situation. We have said it's rare that obviously we get impacts with the sheep flock as well, but I do now warn farmers who are undergoing a BVD breakdown that if they are on a mixed farm, there are in sheep in close contact, that we could get losses there too. I think it's important that we bring that to people's attention. And obviously that sheep can act as a reservoir to infect cattle. I'd read about sheep being able to be infected by BVD. I certainly haven't seen it anywhere else apart from on this farm. So I don't think routine surveillance in sheep is necessarily justified, but certainly potentially in unexplained and repeat breakdowns, looking at the sheep as maybe a culprit might be useful. And that's certainly, as we said earlier, important for eradication schemes, as lots of countries turn towards removing BVD from their cattle herds. Next slide, please. So thank you very much. A couple of acknowledgements of the lovely staff at the SRUC in Edinburgh for talking to me about the testing and for arranging the sequencing of our BVD samples, and also to Boehringer for helping us out with the blood testing of the sheep flock to get on top of the problem. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nikki, for the very interesting presentation and story. We are really amazed by this, and I think Volker would agree with me how the losses are all around. We consider some of them, sometimes they are hidden. I don't know the numbers you mentioned, Volker, are including the sheep, but yeah, this is very interesting. I'm looking at the chat box now and the questions box. Let me see if I have any questions for you, Nikki. Yeah, so I have one question here. Have you had any other cases of BVD in sheep or in cattle on your farms? Maybe, yeah, maybe Nikki or Volker can comment as well. So
I haven't had any other diagnosed cases of BVD in.
Yeah, so border disease. Sorry, I missed that. Maybe, yeah, the question is, have you had any other case of BVD in sheep or border disease in cattle?
Oh, so no other BVD in sheep. I have had a confirmed border disease cow PI though, so I've had one of each in the testing that we've done.
Okay.
Well, I think what Nikki said, this is a fairly rare condition because most farms are fairly specialized and they have either sheep or cattle. But if such a situation occurs, the colleagues must think of the possibility that there might be a transmission between the species, of course, like it was described by Nikki.